Welcome to Dead Man Talking. Tonight's story is the fifth part in a fantastic series by the wonderful mind of the Scandalist. As ever, please do take time to check out their incredible Reddit, which I'll leave a link to in the description box below. As ever, please do let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share, it really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. And so, with that aside, let's get into tonight's story, entitled This morning the doors to our apartment complex were welded shut. I'm starting to think that it was a good idea. Part 5. Let's get straight into that. It's really weird how everything is both extremely tense and dull here. My life is a constant danger, and we don't have any solid plan yet. But I think about it all the time. As weird as it sounds, I'm tired constantly thinking about my chances of survival. And when monsters are not crawling across your window, you don't have that sense of urgency. You don't get anything at all. It feels like you exist only to react to them, interact with them, and maybe eventually end up as their lunch. Over the past few days, I've received a lot of advice from Florida. You guys have it rough there. I still wish I'd rather be there. At least it has colours. Everything here is so grey, I want to poke my eyes out. We've prepared food and water shortages, but there were things we didn't consider. For starters, there are 2 dead bodies in our building, and they're starting to rot. When the guy who poisoned died, his widow kept his body in their apartment. She dressed him up in nice clothes and lay him down on their sofa. We even suspect that she spent some water to wash his body. But 2 days ago, she came to us asking for help. He was starting to swell up and smell. It was a weird sight, seeing him laying there in a tranquil pose, arms on his chest, on that tidy sofa under a painting of a river, yet so swollen and purple. It seemed that the toxin continued its work on him. The smell, it was unbearable. In the first few minutes that I got there, it was making me want to vomit, and knowing that it was a human body, something that was a living individual just some time ago, was making it even more disturbing. She wanted us to take him to the basement, but Maxim objected. His smell would attract the predators. They'll want to break in even more if they smell his stench. We need to throw him outside or leave him on the roof. You can't, she whispered, and her eyes widened. It's not Christian-like. He deserves a burial. She leapt to her husband's carcass and raised her hands, letting everyone know that she won't let us take him. You can't, she repeated in a shrill voice. I won't let you. Get the hell out of here. I won't let you do that to him. We silently surrounded her. Nobody wanted to force her away, but we knew that if it had to be done, the man's dead body was compromising the safety of the living. Maxim wordlessly grabbed her by the wrist. She screamed and tried to break free, but Maxim wouldn't budge. When she realized that she couldn't overpower him, she switched to defense, clawing at him with a free hand. Maxim didn't defend himself, choosing to stoically endure her assault, giving her the opportunity to take it all out on him, and only tilting his head back so that she couldn't claw out his eyes. Take the body, throw it out the window, he said before dragging the woman to the kitchen so that she wouldn't get in our way. In a desperate last-ditch attempt to resist, she grabbed onto the door, but Maxim yanked her away from it. Her grip was strong enough to leave scratches on the door's wooden surface, and one of her nails was left edged into it. We wrapped his body in a blanket. It was easier to carry him that way, both physically and mentally. We carried him to the roof, and one of us said some prayers, and we tossed him over the edge. We didn't even look how he fell, only hearing the heavy thud when his body collided with the ground and rushed to safety before the crawlers showed up. Looking back, I don't feel guilty about what we did, but I feel guilty for not feeling guilty, if that makes sense. I should have felt something. A few hours later, when I looked out the window, the body was already gone. The second body The one of the man who got mauled in his apartment. We left that where it was. We knew that the door to the apartment cut off the intruders, so we didn't bother to do anything about it. I talked to Maxim about the welder and my plan to get his tools. He liked my idea, but warned me that there was nothing we could do about that at the moment. Sneaking in would be dangerous, and we didn't know where to look. It's dangerous to confront them, he told me. They are armed, and they can overreact to us entering their territory. Maybe we should just let them know about our plan. That way, they will cooperate. I reluctantly agreed with him. Back then, we didn't know that the time for negotiation was already up. That those scumbags had already made up their mind. Because yesterday, I walked up to the 5th floor to kill some time with Natasha. I found, to my horror, that the door to her apartment was wide open, and there was no signs of struggle taking place in her hallway. I suspected the worst, but I also didn't abandon the hope. I rushed through all of the rooms, but she was nowhere to be found. Only the old man from the 1st floor that she had taken in was lying on the floor of the guest room. A small pool of blood formed under his left side. He was still alive when I turned him over. He didn't answer my questions as to where Natasha was, instead just whispering, "I'm sorry, young man. I'm sorry. It is all our fault. The sins of the fathers." I didn't have time to heed his cryptic words. I needed to help him or he'd die from bleeding. But I knew that Natasha could be dying somewhere at that very moment. Perhaps somewhere very close. I rushed back to the hallway, trying to find any clue as to where she could be. And sure enough, there were a few drops of blood on the floor, leading outside and towards the door to the roof. It was dangerous to enter the roof on my own, but I didn't care. I rushed outside, looking around. Nothing but a small, barely noticeable trail of blood droplets. I feared that it would lead me to the edge of the roof, but instead, it was heading towards the caged door at the end of it, the one that led to the bandits' hideout. The cage was already locked. I started shaking it and screaming for them to let Natasha go, reckless of me, I know. If I had stayed there for a few more minutes, I'd no doubt attract the crawler and be done with. But one of the bandits emerged from the darkness beyond the cage and shook his pistol at me. "Keep it civil, runt. Your girlfriend is in good hands. We'll take care of her. After all, how does that saying go? If you love her, let her go. Ain't that right?" He gloated. I spat in his face. When he lifted his gun, I turned around and ran away. I heard a few shots behind me, but luckily they missed, and the man must have decided not to spend more time or ammo on me. I had to act quick. I didn't even want to think about what they were going to do to her. Every minute counted. As I was running down the stairs, I was calling for men to gather up, hollering at the top of my lungs, and surprisingly, people started leaving their apartments to see what was going on. They could hear the urgency in my voice and didn't want to miss an important announcement. Never had I been so glad to see the faces of my neighbours before. And just 2 minutes later, I had told them what had happened. 2 women rushed to the 5th floor to help the old man. "Some militia you are," some old woman from the back row said. "Can't even protect us in our homes." "Shove it!" I yelled in her direction, and surprisingly, there were no witty retorts. "Hey kiddo, what's going on?" Maxim stepped through the crowd to see what was going on. I told him what had happened. His eyes turned bloodshot and his fists trembled with fury. "Those scumbags! That settles it," he hollered. "Men, gather up. We're gonna take her back." He confidently hurried towards the roof. I followed, and I could see that the other men, even those who were reluctant, followed after us. We headed straight to the door on the roof, the same door where just a few minutes before I'd almost been shot dead. Only now I wasn't alone. There were at least 10 men with me now. It didn't matter if we probably couldn't break through the gates. What mattered was that when 10 angry men show up at your doorstep, you listen to what they have to say. "Open up!" Maxim shouted through the cage grates. "Open up or I swear to God, I'm going to break these down." "What's all this ruckus?" The same man who had been shooting at me before walked up to the cage and cast me an angry gaze before looking away. While he looked confident, his earlier smugness was now gone. "Give us back the girl or we'll feed you to those monsters outside," Maxim hollered. The bandit raised his hands in a mocking gesture of fear. Easy, Pops. We just took a girl for a night out. No harm in that, right? Maxim kicked the cage in fury, and the man on the other side jumped in surprise. It was now clear that he was feeling tense, and his calmness was just an act. Now! If you think we can't tear these down, you're very mistaken, Maxim shouted. Calm down, Pops. I was just joking, okay? We could all use a bit of humour these days, no? The man said, doing his best to keep smiling. I'll go look for her. He disappeared, and I was getting more and more anxious. Who knew for how long she had been in there? Who knew what they had been doing to her? Every minute counted. We heard some arguing coming from within. The men were shouting at each other, but due to the echo, I couldn't make out what they were saying. Thankfully, I didn't hear Natasha's screams. The shouting subsided, and then, a few minutes later, the man walked up to the cage separating us. I could see Natasha behind him. She had a nasty bruise under her eye, and dried up blood on her lip indicated that she must have been bleeding from her nose. Thankfully, her clothes were intact, with no signs of tear, and there was a strange spark in her eyes that seemed almost out of place. A spark of enthusiasm and determination. Here's your girl, the man grunted, giving her a push towards us as she was passing him. We didn't do much to her, see? Now scram. And her food? Maxim inquired. It was a down payment for keeping her safe with us, was the man's reply as he closed the gate and walked away. Maxim grunted, and I could see the fury in his eyes. To him, it wasn't over. He wasn't going to let this slide. Something unknown in the distance roared, and we hurried back to safety as quick as possible. How are you? Did they... I asked Natasha once we were inside the building, but she raised her hand to stop me. I'm fine. Don't worry about it. Their leader got scared when he saw that arsehole bring me to them. He suspected something like this would happen. How did they get you? I asked her another question, but she shook her head. They lured me out, pretended to be one of the tenants from the next flight of stairs, told me they were looking for some aspirin. It doesn't matter. She lowered her voice to a whisper. I found him. I found the welder. You did? I was genuinely surprised at such a development. Yes, he lives on the 3rd floor, apartment 73. They told me to go hang out with him while they were deciding what to do with me. It seems they were taking good care of him in return for his help. I don't know what happened to the other tenants, though. He didn't want to talk about them. So did you talk to him? Did he tell you why he did it? Why did he weld us in here? I asked with anticipation. Yes. She looked around if anyone could hear us. The men were still descending from the roof and going straight inside her apartment to help, with the old man who was still tended to inside. He says he panicked. He was hunting in the forest for some game when he saw them. He says there are dozens, maybe hundreds of them. They are migrating somewhere, and we were on the sidewalk of their path. So he ran home and barricaded himself and all of us. Of course, that was before he learned about the bandits, and says they moved in just 2 nights before. But, why didn't he run away? I wondered. Why not evacuate? Natasha shook her head. He can't. He has a son and he's completely bedridden, paralysed below the waist. He's too weak to carry him. No elevators too. She grunted and shook her head. He thought it would be all over in a day or 2, but he miscalculated. I imagined the situation the man had found himself in, trapping not only himself but his helpless child and everyone else in this hell. Even though I wanted to feel angry at him, I just couldn't. I told him about your plan. Natasha interrupted my train of thought. He says it makes sense and he's willing to lend his tools and skills if we can find a way to sneak him and his son out. They guard him well. There are constant patrols on the 4th and 2nd floor. Of course, they mostly drink and listen to music, but they have guns. I wanted to say something, but then Maxim approached Natasha and put his hand on her shoulder. You all right, girl? Yes, I'm fine, Natasha said, leaning back. She didn't like the fires in Maxim's eyes. Good. he said, staring into the distance. I have a daughter, you know, younger than you, but still. He gave Natasha's shoulder another shake. They will never do this to you again, girl, he proclaimed, and I could almost hear the lava of pure anger building in his throat, or anyone else for that matter. I've made a decision. We need to strike them first. If you have pests, you gotta smoke them out. He looked Natasha in the face, and the sight of her wounds made him grit his teeth. Tomorrow, we'll burn their entire stairwell down. Wow, absolutely awesome stuff there. The Scandalist, fantastic stuff. Thank you so much. As ever, guys and girls, please do let us know down below in the comments what you thought. Please do like and share. It really does help build the channel and our community further. And of course, don't forget to hashtag TeamFEAR. If you have a story yourself that you'd like to hear on the show, please do get it over to myself at the website, which of course is www.dmtforustofear.com. As ever, I hope you're all well and happy, and looking forward to a wonderful weekend. And above all, remember, be safe.